So the first parameter is FB type. So this can be set to one of 4 values. These values are MM, MC, CM, or CC. So if you hold a triangle and the left trigger and you push up on the digital pad, you can see that you step through each of these 4 values. So I'm going to go back down to MM. So M and C stand for the modulator and carrier. The first letter refers to the location where the output of the modulator is fed into, and the second letter refers to where the output of the carrier is fed into. So if the feedback type is set to MC, then this means that the output of the modulator is fed into the modulator and the output of the carrier is fed into the carrier. And if it's set to CC, then both the modulator and carrier feed into the carrier. The amount the modulator and carrier feedback is set by the car FB and mod FB parameters. So if these are both 0, then there's no feedback at all, and you end up with the normal sort of sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to CC, and then so this means that both the modulator and carrier feed into the carrier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the carrier feedback value a little bit by holding triangle and moving the analog stick up. So I'll bring it up to about, say, 1.1. So you can hear how the sound changed a little bit. So now I'm going to bring it up to a much larger value. So the sound completely changes based upon the value you put in there. So I'll bring this back down again, and now we end up with our familiar FM sound again. So now if I go to the modulator feedback value and I start changing it, we don't hear anything, and that's because we're feeding back both the carrier and the modulator into the carrier. However, if we set this to, say, MM, now we're feeding back both the carrier and the modulator into the modulator, so the modulator feedback value is used. So I'll bring this up to a high value again. And then I'll bring it back down again. So you can hear that this also changes the way that the generator sounds, and that it can be a little hard to predict exactly what it will sound like based upon what you set the modulator feedback to. But small values add a small change to the sound, and large values make a large change to the sound. So feedback in this generator is really powerful because it allows you to really make a lot of different sounds, and this routing scheme is pretty different and pretty unique compared to other FM generators and how they're implemented. One thing is that FM is pretty hard to understand how it works, or to really get a good intuitive feel for it. So really what I recommend is just going through the generator and just messing around with different parameters and getting a sense of what it sounds like. So now that I'm done talking about the carrier, first of all, let me change the modulator feedback all the way back down to 0. And now I'm going to go talk about the modulator. So I'm going to push up on the analog stick while holding triangle in order to activate the modulator parameters. So the first 9 parameters here, again, should look familiar if you're familiar with how the BAM generator works. We have 2 sample and hold values. We have 2 waveform types to choose for the 2 oscillators. We have an offset to choose between the two oscillators. We have oscillator sync, oscillator mix, which mixes between the 2 different oscillators, and then a ring modulation mix as well. So the only parameter that's a little bit different compared to BAM is this mfreq1. Now, mfreq1 is not an absolute frequency. What this is a multiplier, which is multiplied by the carrier frequency. So typically, what you want in an FM generator is for the modulator frequency to be some fixed value compared to the carrier frequency, and the carrier frequency is what you use in order to change the frequency of the generator itself. So, so right now, the carrier is set to E4, so about 160 hertz, and mfreq1 is set to 2, so that means that the modulator frequency is about 320 hertz. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to modify the mfreq value so you can get a sense as to what happens when you change the frequency of the modulator. So now it's not a harmonic anymore of the carrier, so the sound has a certain inharmonic quality to it as well. But if I bring this up to say like around 3. So again, what we've done is the base frequency of the generator hasn't changed, but we just modified the timbre of the generator itself. So another common value to set this to is 1.5. There's a lot of theory written on setting different modulation frequency values, different ratios compared to the carrier frequency in order to simulate different types of instruments. I'm not really an expert on that field, but if you do some research on FM generators and how to model specific types of instruments, you can really create a pretty wide variety of sounds out of the BFM generator just by messing around with the modulation frequency. So one last trick I'd like to talk about before getting into the last set of parameters for the BFM generator is so how you can use a sample and hold in the BFM generator to make sort of a classic computing robot sound. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to set up the modulator so that way it's only using the first oscillator. So I'm going to hold triangle on osmix and bring this up to 1. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the modulating frequency back up to about 2. And then lastly, I'm going to set the sample and hold value to a large value, say around 4,000. So what this means is that the output value of the modulator updates every 4,000 cycles. So this sounds like a series of beeps right now, and what I can do to make this sound like a more convincing robot is to even change this to a different waveform. So I'm going to change this to a noise waveform. So in this way, it's picking a completely random value for the frequency of the modulator every 4,000 samples, so about 10 times a second.